Good morning to all of you. Welcome to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and today is October 15, 2021. It's a Friday, and I do hope you are all getting ready for the weekend, and I hope you have a happy weekend. Let's get the day started with our daily starter. And our daily starter for today, none of us are getting out of here alive. So please stop treating yourself like an afterthought. Eat the delicious food, walk in the sunshine, jump in the ocean. Say the truth you're carrying in your heart like hidden treasure. Be silly, be kind, be weird. There's no time for anything else from Nanea Hoffman. And I chose this daily starter today simply because, well, one, it's a weekend, and second, because I have noticed a lot of people medyo nagpipigil. They are holding back, thinking, oh, I can't really travel, or I can't do this, I can't do that. And recently, I was in a gathering where someone mentioned a friend's name, and I said, well, we haven't heard from him. So why don't we call him and say hello? And we called him and we all said hello. And before you know it, the guy sounded cheerier, happier, and grateful that his friends actually remembered him and called him. And we'd called another person. And the lesson is that if you are going to wait for a time and a chance to see people, to tell them what you think of them, how you feel about them, there may be no tomorrow. Baka wala nang bukas. Alam naman niyo po, you know how COVID-19 has been, and how much tragedy it has caused us. And so if you have a chance, if you remember someone, call them, express your thoughts. And if you think of something like, trip ko yatang kumain ng langgunisa or have ice cream, go for it, because there may be no tomorrow. And if there is, then the more the merrier. That's our daily starter. Let's now move forward to the front page of the Philippine Star. And there you go, the headline on the front page of the Philippine Star: minors start receiving COVID vaccines today. Yan po, umpisa na ang bakunahan ng mga kabataan, mag-uumpisa 14 to 17 years old, susundan ng 12 to 14 yata, basta yung ganong boundary, and it will require the consent and informed consent of parents, and of course also informing the minors what is involved in the vaccination, why they need to be vaccinated, what are the benefits, and what will be the expected side effects, if any. So let's thank the Lord for that, because at least yung mga bata, hopefully before December, pwede na ring makalabas. Because if you get vaccinated today, October 15, then by November 15, you will probably be fully vaccinated already. Meanwhile, Malacanang Pala says it is premature to react on premature to react on poll substitution abuse. Kasi everyone seems to be towing the same line or repeating the same statement that unless a case has been filed and unless there is sufficient evidence that someone is intentionally filing a COC to abuse the substitution, medyo hindi pa raw napapanahon. Okay, let's go to the other news on the front page. And you have a photo, a young resident is vaccinated at the Marikina Sports Center yesterday as the city government of Marikina cautioned against allowing unvaccinated minors outdoors. Kasi ang nangyari po, a number of mayors in Metro Manila, along with doctors, have expressed concern that we should be careful and slowly lift the restrictions in NCR because baka maging mga kabayong nakawala sa koral and we suddenly have an unexpected surge. So, yun po. Next up, in the front page. Where do we go? Palace, no need for law on mandatory vaccination. Okay. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque said country supply of pandemic jobs has to be administered first before the government thinks about passing a law making vaccination a requirement. Pagka nagkabakunahan na, okay? Pagka nagkabakunahan na, aanin mo pa yung batas, okay? Nabakunahan na nga. Anyway, that's Malacanang saying no need for a law on mandatory vaccination. Okay, back to the front page of the Philippine Star. Okay, medyo bumabagal ang ating sistema. Pakibilisan ng konti. Yun, okay. In case you're one of those who are dying to watch the movie No Time to Die, eto, baka swertehin na kayo. The movie houses will be open to 30% capacity. Okay, 30% capacity only, and malamang at malamang you need to show you are fully vaccinated, you have all the outfits, and in this photo of a mall at Eastwood Mall, ayun, binobomba nila yung kanilang sinihan. Next up, doctors apprehensive over alert downgrading. Yun yung sinasabi ko, I mentioned that earlier. Doctors and the College of Physicians, if I'm not mistaken, have Philippine College of Physicians President Dr. Maricar Limpin warned that the downgrading of alert status could trigger another surge in Metro Manila. Medyo nag-aalala sila and they are apprehensive because unless it is done slowly, calibrated carefully, ay nako, baka problema raw po. Okay, now let's go, move on. And you have welcome to Manila. Meeting points na naiyayatayan mga kaibigan. Yan, Ninoy Aquino International Airport yesterday. A lone arrival at the terminal. And ayan na, medyo may mga dumarating na from abroad. Well, only Filipinos actually are being allowed to enter the country and foreigners with long stay visa. Okay? So yun, foreign tourists still not allowed to enter the Philippines. Kung tourist lang po, no? But if they are long stay foreigners who are or permanent residents, etc., member of the diplomatic corps, if I'm not mistaken, they are allowed to come in. Pero the rest, stay away muna as the country tries to figure things out. For COVID-19 tally of Philippine cases, active cases, 84,850 right now. Confirmed new cases, 7,835. Bumababa ng bumababa. Pero deaths, ayun po, pataas pa rin, 154. And the total number of deaths has gone past the 40,000 mark. It is now 40,221. Okay. And the last two pieces of news on today's front page, Maring death toll hits 30. Yung inakala natin what was initially reported as a typhoon that had low casualty turned out to be very bad because now the number of dead people from Typhoon Maring has hit 30. Okay, karamihan po nalunod, natabunan, nadaganan. Okay. And last but not the least, Jollibee Group, Ayala, Aboitiz, among best employers according to Forbes. Okay, so that's the front page of the Philippine Star. Now let's move on to the program and find out what's in store. Okay, medyo tayo po ay magbabalik tanaw. Kumbaga, giving them a second look, okay? Parang alam nyo na, you know what I'm actually, I'm just being funny this morning, but because magwi-weekend, pero sa iba po sa amin, walang weekend, magtatrabaho pa rin kami through the weekend. But anyway, we promise to bring back two ladies to talk about women's issues. And I think many of you would agree that the past week or 2 weeks has grabbed the attention of the nation, particularly in politics, because a woman has become the central focus of politics, namely Vice President Leni Robredo. And what has surprised many, although a lot of the men are still in denial, the male politicians, what surprised many is that biglang naglabasan yung mga nanay, mga misis, mga ate in support of Leni Robredo. In fact, I've said it at least twice, women power manifested. Okay, so let's bring in two ladies who were our guests a week ago, none other than the representatives of the Philippine Business Coalition for Women Empowerment, or PBCW. We have with us Julia Abad, Executive Director, and Boots Garcia, Co-Chairperson of PBCW. Good morning again, ladies. As promised, you are back on the show, and I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion.
Good morning.
Julia? Okay, Boots, good morning. Good morning, Julia. What are your reactions to what happened in past week with the declaration of Leni Robredo running for president and all the brouhaha, and then the sudden emergence of pink?
You want to go ahead, Julia?
Well, I was going to say, I thought I would wear a neutral color today, but then I turned on my screen, nakita ko naka-pink si Cito.
But let me clarify, I mean, I've worn pink countless of times, and ako talaga nakahilera na ang mga shirt ko way ahead, thanks to my boss commander, my wife. Okay, she just puts it there, and I do not alter them. Masyado akong obedient. So pink, well, whatever. It's a weekend.
It's a good
Yan
happy.
tawag dyan, Cito, well-trained.
Woof!
Domesticated.
Okay. Anyway, so Julia, you were saying?
No, I think well for personally, it was something I felt na parang you were feeling low energy, a little parang uncertain about what you were going to see in the future. But for me, after I watched, it was a sort of very compelling, very honest public declaration. And after that, you feel a little energized, right? At least for me. And then after, I thought, is this only me? Because I was waiting. It's something I was waiting to hear. And then it was sort of a surprise also for me to see that there were a lot of people, and many that I didn't really know personally, who seemed to feel the same way. Parang, okay, now we have something to do.
Okay, I don't want to put you ladies in a corner because you've never really expressed your political preferences, or it would be unfair to presume that just because you're women, you will be Leni. Okay, but I'm really curious because I could be wrong, but I got the impression that women power manifested itself last week, especially with at the speed and at the rate and the speed that Pink established its presence on social media. So the question, Boots, is What is the sentiment or the current mood as far as the business community is concerned, particularly women in business? Because a woman president, what does it speak to them?
Well, firstly, it has always been our, well, opinion, position rather, that women, regardless of whatever sphere, whether it's business, politics, social, civic, etc., should be given their rightful place. We're not really asking for much. Why? We're 50% or even more of the population. So it's just appropriate that we are given a voice in all spheres of society. That said, you probably may be aware or not aware that, in fact, of total number of registered voters in the Philippines, 50 plus 51% to be exact, are actually women. But women haven't really. I mean, I don't think there really is a women's vote, if you might say it. But I think if women actually got together and united for not necessarily for a candidate, for an advocacy or that they should be pushing for, I think there is such a thing as the power of women's, not necessarily just in voting, but in really in deciding and contributing to, for example, the type of policies that should be formulated to support women's concerns.
Is the concept?
So,
Sorry, Boots,
business,
but
as far as business is concerned, as far as business is concerned, this is something that should be given appropriate consideration, if not priority.
okay, now, Julia, I suppose, are more aware of what's going abroad. Beyond the Philippines. I'm sure you're also aware of what's the trend is, or what's going on abroad. Is this notion of a woman's vote, yung binanggit ni Boots, the woman's vote, is that just a fabrication of Western media, or has it ever manifested itself that the population of women in a given country or in a nation came out and made the stand in the election, in their election?
I think, well, if you look at the case of the US, although it was not in support of a female candidate, I mean, the presidential candidate was not female, but there were a lot of women's issues that came out around the time of the campaign and subsequently after. There was the Me Too, and I think just the general pushback against sort of misogynistic, sexist behavior. And I think President Biden, in the run up to the campaign, he was very vocal about treating his partner, his wife, as an equal. In fact, he always talks about her achievements, giving her a sort of, he's very clear about that treatment of his wife as an equal. And then I think he also made a statement by choosing very strong sort of woman of color as his vice president. And I think that really worked for the campaign in terms of bringing together, addressing that issue of respect for women,
Okay.
pushback against a certain type of behavior that was
Yeah.
undesirable for females as a whole.
Yeah, because when Boots mentioned women vote, Boots, I'm reminded of New Zealand, and also of I think it was Sweden, where practically five cabinet members. I'm not sure if it was Sweden, or it was one of those nations where five women were voted into a cabinet position, and I was saying. Why is it not the case in the Philippines? Parang in the Philippines, it was either a fluke, or an emotional spark of history, or a political battle, but it was never women as a population expressing their political will. Bakit dito sa Pilipinas parang hindi natin nadidinig yan. I honestly don't think it's ever been uh, popular or discussed widely.
Well, siguro it has to do also with, although we must also admit that we've had a lot of women firsts in the Philippines, no, insofar as political. Well, we've had two female presidents, but
Mhm.
siguro I would say that it's partly, well, uh, that's actually the ano nga, the what do you call this, the seeming disconnect. We've had two female presidents, we've had many women in politics, in government, etc. We've reached high statistics in, in the gender gap index, but in fact, the reality is there's still a lot of issues that have to be dealt with, including yung sinasabi mo, being more vocal and be more upfront about, shall we say, exhibiting or demonstrating what women can do. And that's what we're
Mhm.
trying to address nga, no? Because sometimes the gap is in the women themselves. Okay? Some women also sometimes do not have as much the confidence to, to demonstrate and show what they're capable for, what they're worth. The other issue that sometimes we face, women themselves don't support women. Okay? So yung nangyari recently is really probably an evidence that women are really out there to support women, and we need to do more of that.
Mhm.
Not
I mean,
necessarily just in a political situation, but
y-
really even in a business situation. Let's, for example, if you're a female CEO, it goes without saying that you yourself should be promoting the rise of women in the organization. You should be
mhm.
influencing the type of policies that your business should undertake so that women are given as equal opportunity. We're not really, no, I'd like to correct the impression that we are, women, anong tawag dito, yung feminist, etc., etc. Hindi eh. We're just giving women the rightful place that they deserve. Because, for example, if a company does not deliberately say, let's have so many percent of women employees, for example, then the tendency is nakakalimutan yun. Because, more often than not, it's the men who will come forward to apply for a position, to consider a promotion. So let's develop the women so that they will be more, have more confidence and more interest to be concerned about their own situation.
Okay, what areas, Julia, do you think women or young women or girls should should be developed in so that we can balance things out? Because I am reminded of Israel, for instance. Their call to military service is for both men and women. And that's why dun sa bansa ng Israel ay ang babagsik ng mga babae. They have had one of the toughest woman leader, Golda Meir.
Golda Meir.
I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to tangle with her. And I think even in Europe, there are areas where women and girls are placed so that they can equally develop and compete. Kasi dito parang, I think, my suspicion is it's really our culture.
Cultural.
We treat the girls as little princess, and then when they're no longer cute and bubbly and funny, we start developing them into domestic helpers. Oh, magwalis ka dyan, magluto ka dyan, ganyan. Then before you know it, I mean, I'm not being, I'm not making them look bad, but it's the mindset, eh. Parang ginagawang utusan ng magulang. And
Yeah.
yung mga lalaki, spoiled, and then, oh, sige, ako gumawa ng pera, di akong pagsilbihan. Parang sabi ko, batukan ko kaya kayo, makita nyo. But, what areas, Julia, would be a good beginning for women to, because, I don't know, we raised our daughter to be independent and tough. And she's now living on her own, making her own decisions abroad. And no one to hold on
Yeah.
to. Ika nga.
I think you hit the button on so many things.
Like
So
pop.
first of all, I think it really has to do with upbringing and how you raise little girls to be. For example, when we were younger, the things that we were learning in school for schools for girls are stuff like typing, sewing, and cooking. There, it's that sort of gives you an idea of what kind of life you're being prepared for. And now when we look at business settings, you see a lot of women in the office and a lot of women in senior management, and in fact some women in some very senior leadership position. But for the most part, these women are doing sort of support roles and not really hard nosed operational, given operational responsibilities. So you kind of see what are the fields that organizations are used to sort of opening up for women, and also culturally what women are set up to be doing. If you look at when we talk to companies, that are in the fields of sort of engineering, tech, they always say that we'd really like to hire more women because we'd like to encourage a little bit more of diversity in terms of ideas, especially in those fields, right, where developments come really quickly. But there are not a lot of women who would like to apply. And so the pool is really made up of men. So you're right. It's really a pipeline issue as well, because girls are not sort of primed to go into certain fields and to perform certain kinds of work. And so I think when you talk about leadership, women in leadership positions, it's a really great opportunity to provide some modeling for little girls, to see that look, here's a woman, she's an engineer. Here's a woman, she's a scientist, and it can be done, and it's done really well. So I think that's it, since the problem is really partly also cultural. Modeling is really important. For me, I have a daughter, so it's really important for me that she sees impressive female role models who are able to do things because they're good at what they do.
Boots, you represent the Philippine Business Coalition for Women Empowerment. Now, you give talks, you give gender, ano yun, sabi mo, work
Assessment. Assessment.
assessment, yeah,
Yeah.
gender assessment, etc. But does that suffice? Kasi parang I mean, Julia, you've had some exposure in politics in Malacanang, etc. And one would imagine if you were really to push the agenda, it would necessitate that there is a group, a very powerful, determined group pushing for this. Hindi ko nagsasuggest ng party list, baka mamaya kung ano maisip nyo diyan, ano. But I realize that you either have to become a lawmaker or a member of the executive, or you have to have a really very strong organization that the politicians can't ignore, that business respect, but you go beyond the limits of business. Bakit wala nun sa Pilipinas? I mean, I had put my hopes honestly in the beginning, the very beginning, on that women's group. Ayan, matanda na ang kuya, no? Ano ba yung naging
Gabriela?
Gabriela.
Yeah.
I really had my hopes on Gabriela. Sabi ko naman sa inyo, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. Sabi ko na, here, we finally have a legitimate organization for women who will fight for women. Ayan nangyari, napunta sa politika. And I said, sayang, we missed the boat on that one.
It takes more than a party. This whole advocacy requires an entire ecosystem, okay? To be honest, we do have a lot of gender already laws. Probably people are not aware. In fact, PBCW has compiled this into a little book which is really an inventory of all the gender supportive policies that already exist. And I would like to believe that we are a little, better than many of our countries. Of course, at the end of the day, regulations are only good as they are implemented. Okay, so I think that's an area where we do need a lot of. Okay, we do have a Philippine Commission on Women. I don't know if you're aware of that organization, Cito,
Yes. Oh.
which has been given the mandate to really push the agenda across all the other what they call this agencies of government, across all governments. And then we do have everything that you could probably think of ideal, and including we do have a gender development plan. Okay, then you are probably are aware that 5% of the total budget of any government instrumentality has been allocated for gender and development. But that has been very much unutilized. In fact, you know that the COA comes out with a report every year, right, for all government agencies. And
Yeah.
in many instances, including in the case of PCDA, where I was sitting in the board and chairing at a certain point in time, it was always a finding of the COA. Okay, so I think a lot of that. So aside from regulations, aside from government agencies, of course you have the private sector trying to do its own thing. You have the regulations which exist. At the end of the day, you need someone to, shall we say, or someone, some organization, some group to quarterback all of that, to orchestrate all of this, to make sure that the agenda is pushed. And more importantly, I think there's such a thing as setting the tone at the top.
Okay.
Whether it's in
Let's.
business,
Yeah.
the CEO himself, herself has to demonstrate that she supports this agenda.
Yeah. Let's go for a quick break, and when we come back, is it a matter of making a lot of noise? Is it a matter of holding millions of votes in your hand? Or is it a matter of getting back to the basics, like talking to the parents who own the businesses? Okay, we'll go for a quick break. When we come back, let's discuss this issue of equality of women and men in the Philippines, and how we develop our girls, our daughters, and the women in our society. We'll be right back here on Agenda.
Sure.
Welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and thank you for those of you who have, ano na ba yung tawag doon, subscribed to Cignal TV and who watch Agenda on channels 8 and 251 News PH. And thank you to PLDT for continuing to give us excellent home internet, fiber optic internet service. Okay, and with us, we continue the program. Our representatives of the Philippine Business Coalition for Women Empowerment, or PBCW. We have Julia Abad and Boots Garcia. Ladies, konting comedy lang, konting humor lang before we get into the serious part. After I interviewed you, I don't know how I came across it, but I saw this post on Facebook, and it's funny but may hugot, ano? And it goes like this: He who is without ovaries shall not make laws for those who do. Philippians 5:12. Parang nilalaro yung Bible verses. Pero, may hugot, mga kaibigan, kasi ang daming mga gumagawa ng batas tungkol sa kababaihan, wala namang kinalaman o walang gamit tungkol sa kababaihan. So anyway, Boots, go ahead.
Gusto ko mag-react dyan. On the contrary, dapat kasama sila sa paggawa ng batas eh. That, kung if the males like you, and we're just so happy that I think we have a male champion in Cito Beltran, a male champion for women's empowerment. We do not also want to alienate the men. Our policy or our practice is that we include men in the conversation. Because let's be realistic. Majority of men still, make the decisions, make the law. They're the legislators, etc., etc. So therefore, we have to bring them into the fold. We have to get their attention and their support as well. So it's just appropriate that men who do not have ovaries should also participate in the crafting of regulations and laws to support women, so that it becomes more inclusive.
Okay.
It can't be that only women make laws for women. All
Okay, well,
genders.
like I said, that was intended for humor.
Yeah, but
relax ka lang, Boots. Relax ka lang. Anyway, Julia, I'm just teasing. Julia, before we went into the break, I raised the issue. Is it something that could be because of parents? Because while you ladies were talking, I was reminded that I've been approached by several women in the past, mga little younger, mas neneng ng konti kay Julia, who were very, very equipped, very smart young women, but who were very frustrated. Sabi ko, where is this anger coming from? And I discovered that they were victims of our cultural realities, where the company is. And please, if you are one of these people or one of these families, wag po kayong magalit sa Kuya Cito. I'm just stating a fact. Many from Filipino-Chinese families, they give the power to the men or to the boys and deny that to the girls. Kumbaga, hindi, si kuya ang masusunod, the inheritance goes to the boy, the name goes to the boy, etc. And I'm like, but the boy is stupid. Why are you giving it to him when your daughter is smarter? Oh no, it's like that. Diba? So, Julia, you represent a younger generation. Is that still a problem, as I think it is, that men, in many ways, it's because of the culture na kasi dapat si kuya?
Well, since you started out with humor, I will respond a little bit with humor. The reason why I like to come back here is even if I don't fit na the UN definition of youth, you still call me neneng. But seriously, I think kanina you were saying, what kinds of environments lead to the rise of, Jacinda Ardern or other equally impressive and young, would-be global leaders. I was reading a couple of articles some way back, and it's really they are a creation of an environment that really puts value on diversity and inclusivity. It's not just them rising to leadership positions and them being able to create a sort of cabinet, full of or with impressive women from a diverse set of backgrounds. It's not a one-off thing that they came to power and were able to put these women in. They were a creation of a community that really values diversity and inclusion, and they were able to rise to that position because of the support, or maybe actually because of the urging of that kind of environment. So you're right. These issues still come up. I mean, you still hear, in at work, you'll still say, there are sort of things that are not appropriate for women, even if it's a knee jerk reaction. For example, just to give you an example of how cultural the problem is. In here, we have a term called habulin for men, diba? As if, if you attracted a lot of women, it was really through no active, with no active participation from you. It's just something that happens to you and you cannot help it. Na pinaghahabol ka ng babae kasi habulin ka eh. There's nothing you can do about it. But for women who, like to date around, or anything, malandi ka. It's something you choose to do, but in fact, you're referring to the same kind of behavior. So that you're boxing. This has nothing to do maybe with leadership, but it has to do with boxing men and women in certain things. There's certain behavior that's excusable because you're a man, but if you're a woman, you have to be a little more behaved, and the standard is a bit your woman standard is a bit higher. So I think even when you talk about leadership positions, maybe it's something that people expect would come naturally to men, and women have to fight for it a bit more. If you look at classrooms, I had a meeting a few months back with a group that was training teachers, and she was and the woman I met with was saying, we have to. These are values we need to inject in the classroom, because if you look at our classrooms, the class president is almost always a boy, and then the class treasurer or class secretary who has to do all the work is usually a girl, and that sort of sets them up for what happens later. So I think it's really a matter of creating an environment that looks at women with respect, and really sort of encourages and sanctions behavior as it is merited, and not based on whether the person committing this kind of behavior is a man or a woman. It's a tough call. I think more than loud voices, it really requires sustained effort, and a bit of, I guess, mindfulness and self awareness for both men and women.
I think there is no denying, as Boots pointed out, as you Boots have pointed out, that we have achieved many things in Philippine society. Not just getting female politicians elected, or women having women presidents, senators, etc. But I mean, even in the protection of women, we already have that, women and children's desk, etc. Mas proactive na yung mga police in defending women, and they become less tolerant of abuse. The question, I suppose, would be, what other fields or what areas are we very weak in? Kasi I would like to see an all women cabinet, or majority women cabinet, kasi mas intellectually honest daw ang mga babae, sabi ni Miriam Defensor Santiago, di ba? Now, but what are the areas na medyo we really need, we in media and everyone need to pay attention to?
Even media depicts women as, oh, well, like, let's take an example. Have you noticed sa advertisements ng mga detergent, mga, you know, hindi, isn't it usually the woman depicted as washing the clothes or ano? So communication has a lot to do about it as well, no? So why can't the man be the laundry person, depicted in an advertisement for a detergent or for a bar soap of bar? So the other important component of is the way we communicate about gender. That again, through communication, sometimes it just what do you call this, enhances the ano rather makes it even more obvious that there is a bias because of how we depict the roles of men and women. Like for example, Cito, you're wearing pink, hindi ba? Typically, yung pagsusuot ng pink, 'di ba pag bata pa sasabihin, "Oh, magmanganganak na ako, pink yung babae yung anak ko, so pink yung bibilhin kong what do you call this, baby's clothes. Tapos lalaki, so blue." Why does it have to be pink? Why can't men like Sito be wearing pink? Does it have to be always? So ang daming bagay na kailangang ayusin eh. The way we communicate about gender is one example. So the way we teach even our families, our children, you hear this often. Babae, mag-aasawa ka rin naman, tama na sa yung high school. Lalaki, ayan, mag-aral ka pa, pag-aaralan pa kita, etc. Tapos, babae, secretarial na lang pag-aralan mo. Lalaki, mag-engineering ka o mag-abogasya ka, mag-law ka, kasi lalaki ka. So, umpisa pa lang, it starts with the family. And then that's carried forward when the child goes to school. The same behavior takes place. Then when the child starts working, ganun na naman. And then you go out into the society, ganun pa rin ang thinking. So there's so many things that needs to be done. But I think more importantly, it has to start in the family, in the home. And it needs education of all, including males, that they should not be continuing to have this type of gender bias or, sometimes they say unconscious bias.
Medyo pasensya ka na, pasensya na kayo. Bigla akong inulan dito ng pagkahaba-habang message. I have to read it, no? Flexible work for women, unpaid care works has been on offer to both men and women in many companies for decades. However, it is usually women who are in non-standard employment, such as part-time work, often to meet the demands of children, sick parents, etc. Women remain largely responsible for the organizational and physical work of making sure kids are completing homework, etc., etc. But policies that make it easier to transition to a part-time job or take leave may actually be weakening their position in the labor market and their lifetime earnings potential, therefore widening gender gaps. Kumbaga, the cultural role of women is defeating their opportunities as equal members in the
Labor market,
business or
workplace, in the workplace.
workplace.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
Julia, sige. Ikaw na muna.
I think Cito, on that point, the pandemic actually offers a bit of an opportunity to even things out. We did a survey about in May and then December last year with investing in women that looked at employees' perspectives on their productivity, and also on how much help they were getting at home and how much domestic responsibilities they were taking on. And I think overall, well, employees were feeling, largely productive actually in a work from home setup. and you will see that women were feeling that they were getting a bit more help on the domestic front, and men were feeling like they were doing a bit more on the domestic front. So and because of the pressure brought about by the pandemic, the lockdowns, work from home became more of a necessity rather than an option. So while before it was, you're right, the desire to balance their home responsibilities with that of their work ones, found more women than men taking up the flexible work options because of the pandemic. Well, everyone had to do it, and also we're finding that companies are looking at flexible work as a more permanent arrangement. So it's not really something you do that is sort of looked down upon, as you were saying, but it's really something that companies are slowly beginning to see as something that contributes to well retaining more women, because it is true that women opt for flexible work. Like for me, it really works because I do have to do a lot of this homework checking, making sure that my daughter's in front of the screen every day at least once. I will get a text while I'm in Zoom meetings. I will get a text from the teacher, Emma's not in class and it's 5 minutes already. So I have to say, excuse me, I have to make sure that my daughter is, on the screen, but in class and not in whatever playing Minecraft or something. It's a reality. I think companies see it now more as an advantage, especially those that are trying to attract sort of more women, a younger workforce, and I guess the more progressive companies. But we've had a lot of interest in flexible work, even from larger, more traditional organizations, because they feel that it helps the workforce as a whole. So while you're right that the cultural concepts of what a woman's role is, like, okay, you can work as long as you're still able to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Sorry, meron kasing jackhammer sa likod ko. Sa mga construction na ito. Anyway, no, but I'm already getting riled up listening to what you were saying, kasi I've come to realize it's really how we raise the men. We've raised the girls correctly, maybe sometimes overly protective of the girls
Right.
to a fault, but it's the boys that we have not raised properly in terms of gender equality, respect, and equal share in the house. Kasi parang mali. Anyway, let's go for a quick break at baka mapagalitan ako ng aking EP, but I want to tackle that, no, as a last point for parents who have boys in their family, and how to raise these boys so they can be productive and equal in the workplace and at home. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Please stay with us. Okay, welcome back to the program agenda. And with us, we have Julia Abad, Executive Director of PBCWE, and Boots Garcia, Co-Chairperson of PBCWE. Okay, ladies, I raised the point where I believe the girls are raised properly, but it's the boys who are either allowed to just run to the playground, do what they want to, or are not raised. Sabi mo nga kanina, Boots, pagdating sa commercial, bakit babae naglalaba? Kasi ako po yung tigahugas ng plato at saka tigaluto ng ulam. May roles. We have roles in life. But are the boys now raised better than in our generation na parang si kuya can get away with murder pero si ate has to wash the dishes?
I can speak about my own experience, no. I was brought up by, government. My parents were both government officials, and my mom was had a full-time career. So I grew up my own role models are my parents, because early on I was already, I was raised to be an independent uh, female, given also the fact that I was the eldest in a family of three, and my two younger siblings were both boys. No, so I was raised up in that environment, and my mother worked until she retired at, at the late at 45 or 50, 45 years in government. So I would say that, to your question, how can we raise the boys to develop a mindset of gender, sensitivity? It starts from the male figure. Okay, as you said, nga, you probably don't have sons. No, you only have one child. But if you had a son, if you demonstrated and showed to your son yourself that you believe or you support this kind of mindset, then it will naturally, if your son sees that you wash dishes, that you cook, that you participate in so-called domestic chores, or even now that you tutor your child, does it have to be always the mother? Then that will ultimately, the environment is the right environment, if you might say, is already created by the kind of example and a role model that the male figure demonstrates within the family. So when that child goes out into society, in school, it has been ingrained in his mind that I can also men should also be doing what we thought were just roles for women. So it has to, and that has to be reinforced, to my mind, in education. That even in education, again, as Julia says, why does the president have to be a male? For example, when there is a nomination process, I as a teacher would probably encourage, okay, let's nominate both girls and boys to the officer positions. It has to be proactive. It will not happen if we just sit down and wait that sana maisip nila, sana hindi. Kailangan we are proactive about it, whether in family, in education, in society, in the workplace, in the wherever, in the entire sphere of the economy, if we might put it.
Again, we have run out of time, so but I want to thank both of you. I think this is how it's done. Little by little, you do not win the war
Pwede
overnight.
mag-pitch,
Yes. Okay,
Hindi
quick,
ba
quick.
kasi I forgot to mention, and I apologize to my organization for that. When we said, is there a group? We are actually a group. Philippine Business Coalition is just a project of a bigger group, which is the
Mm,
Philippine Women's Organization. And what is
okay.
it? It's a coalition of women in various spheres. We have startup women, women in startups, women in mature businesses, women CEOs, women board directors, women in development, and women in, did I forget anything? But anyway, it's a coalition of 6 organizations, all espousing for women's empowerment. So we were organized 4 years ago, and PBCW is our first project, but we are doing other things to promote. We're also
We-
doing work on policy influence with the
Okay.
Securities and Exchange Commission, etc. So
Okay, we
meron
will
naman,
we will be
meron.
happy to invite their representatives to
And
the
that's also
program.
me.
Hindi na pwede
Unfortunately,
yan.
kung ayaw mo
Paul
na
na yan.
akong, kung
Monopoly na
ayaw mo
yan.
na akong makita, Ako pa rin yun, but of course, I will invite my other trustees to be part of the
Okay.
conversation.
Well, Julia, thank you very much. Boots, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, hindi ako magaling sa Bible verse, pero raise up a child in the way they should go, and they will not drift from it when they are older. Ako po, hanggang ngayon, I am mindful of walking on the side nearest to the road. I accompany my wife when crossing. Alam nyo, siya very European. I'm okay, leave, I
Yeah,
can manage.
independent.
But
Yeah.
ganun po, because I was raised by my parents that way, especially by my mother, Marita. Anyway, thank you very much, ladies. And that
Thank you
is
again. Baka magsawa ka na sa amin. Sana hindi muna.
okay, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's Julia Abad and Boots Garcia. And now I leave you with the Lord's commanded blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his face toward you and give you peace. Happy weekend po. Take care. Thank you for joining us here on Agenda. Keep it here on One News PH.